Way to save the season to throw. Fire down! It's a blast down at the goal line by San Diego! Tomlinson off the left side. Tomlinson sidestep. Hello, history books. There's the half to now. Here's Staley. Staley's inside the 10. Inside the 5. And the Chargers win the game.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Emergency pod for Jamie, Garrett, and Craig on this day where we all had to jump on here because big news this morning, big news. Chargers fire head coach Brandon Staley, fire general manager Tom Telesco after the embarrassing showing on Thursday night against the Raiders. Jamie's here, Craig's here. Welcome to the celebratory podcast. Before we start, I think Jamie put it good on Twitter. We will not be celebrating two men who lost their jobs today, just what they meant to this organization and the chokehold that these two had on this organization. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. I know we're going to probably cover Dean's statement today. We got to cover a lot of things. I know everybody's going to be asking who we think should be hired now as head coach, who should be hired as GM. I don't know. We'll get into all that. But first, off the top, Craig, what was your initial reaction after the? I know something came in the Discord yesterday and through text yesterday. But what was your news when it finally hit Twitter today?
Well, I was sitting here. I work from home, so doing my job. And I missed the news initially. I just so happened to glance at the computer. I don't know, just because I've been up since all night. One of my kids has a fever. So I've been up all night and since about 4 a.m., just refreshing my feed, waiting on something. And then when I saw it today, man, I almost fell out of my chair because it wasn't that they fired Staley. It was that it was a package deal. And Telesco win as well. Was not expecting that side of it. So again, no, we're not celebrating two men losing their jobs. I mean, also feels I'm not going to shed a tear for two millionaires. I'm sure they'll be fine, but by the same token, it's not great that someone lost their employment and they have to shuffle the deck and figure out what their next move is. But man, ultimately, yes, this is the start. This is the direction that we needed to go in. There's one more piece that we'll see how that goes, whatever goes on with that. You guys know what I'm talking about in John Spanos. But for today, we're happy. This is the start of a new. And it appears we may be going in the right direction, according to some information that I think Jamie's probably going to speak to a bit here.
Now, before you do, Jamie, breaking news here. Chargers have relieved defensive run game coordinator and defensive line coach Jay Rodgers of his duties as of right this second.
Wow.
So just a little background. I was texting these guys here who we obviously have a text chain going and we talk about what happens before we put it in the Discord. It always gets to Discord. It always ends up here. And I told them, we had talked about, the feeling that the Chargers at halftime yesterday, the feeling was Staley was going to get fired today. And that they were going to start working an interim head coach because of the long week, because they played on a Thursday, give them extra couple days. We now know that Tom Telesco was part of that deal. They put JoJo Wooden in as interim GM. And then now, after the text today, he was giving me some insight on who he thought would be GM and head coach. It ended up being Giff Smith as the head coach. He thought Kellen Moore might be that guy. But what he said today was it was chaotic in the office. It felt like cut day for players when the roster goes down to 53 and everybody's kind of, looking around, side-eyeing coaches, hoping in their names don't get called. They don't get pulled into the coach's office. And that chaos clearly has carried over because Jay Rodgers a guy who gets fired today. Hopefully my guy isn't part of cuts today in the coaching staff. But as of right now, he is safe. Prayers up for him. But Jay Roger, he was not lying. It's a chaotic day in the Chargers front office today.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I was shocked that they fired Telesco today. I figured it would happen. I kind of figured they would leave it until the end of the season just because, I mean, what does hiring an interim GM really do at this point? The roster is locked in place outside of maybe some elevations from the practice squad. You're not making any trades. You're not signing any contracts. What do you really need an interim GM for? But I'm glad they made the move. I mean, when you're going into halftime and that shot of the Spanos family in the owner's box last night and the looks on their faces as their team is down 21-0 in the first quarter and 42-0 at halftime, it just told the whole story. I mean, you just knew they were just over this bullshit. They're ready for a change. I was kind of halfway expecting them to fire Staley at halftime. Anybody who was watching the game live knows Richard Sherman went on at halftime and was like, the Chargers should make history. They should fire Brandon Staley right now at halftime. I was honestly surprised Staley even bothered with the halftime chat
interview. Yeah.
With the sideline reporter.
Yeah,
that blew me away. But yeah, this is a move that had to be made. You can't lose by 42 points on national television and expect anybody to keep their jobs. And you can point fingers at Staley, and certainly there's a lot of things to blame here with Staley. But Tom Telesco had his fingerprints all over that roster. And, you can say the roster is talented, but they quit. Well, Telesco put together a roster that quit live in real time on national television. And that Q word, quit, is not something that we use lightly. I'm not sure we've ever come out and said on this show that a team quit on a coach. We've had discussions about it, but to come out and definitively say, yeah, the eye test tells us like 90% of that roster quit last night after the first touchdown. They were done. And there's no more of an indictment on a head coach or a general manager than having your team quit like that live and in real time. So they had to make the move. I'm glad they did it all at once. I kind of thought they'd keep Telesco, have him make the announcement on Staley, and then walk him out at the end of the year, just because there was no rush and he's not really affecting what's going on in the locker room so much. But they obviously felt like they needed to cut the cancer out and move on. So they did one clean sweep and got rid of everything. And I applaud them for that, because for a team that historically has favored continuity, even continuity and mediocrity or worse, they've always favored keeping people in place. They never fire coaches during the season. I don't recall them ever firing a general manager during a season. And now, not only did they fire Staley before his contract was up, because he still had one more year left on his deal, they fired him during the season. And it might have taken a lot of strength for them not to fire him during the game last night. So kudos to the Spanos family for making the right decision and making the change. And now the question is, where do we go from here? And there are some interesting things coming from Ian Rappaport and Colin Cowherd about the team being willing to give up control, maybe being open to, I think the word was reconsidering how they go about hiring head coaches and GMs, and talking about giving up power and either hiring a powerful GM head coach combination or hiring a head coach who's going to come in and do both. And those are pretty significant, like groundbreaking changes for this organization. So the fact that they're even talking about it, I think, is pretty telling.
Yeah. And let's not forget the opponent that they gave up all those points to last night. We're talking about a 5-8 Raider team. We're talking about a team that lost their game last week 3-0. Come back and embarrass the Chargers. We haven't
with an interim head coach,
and we have never talked about, and a backup quarterback, by the way. We have never talked about a team quitting, not in the Mike McCoy era, not in the Anthony Lynn era, but that team last night quit. And I don't know why Staley even accepted that interview. Like Jamie said, there's nothing to say at that point. The guys quit on you, and this is embarrassing. He's been a punching bag for weeks now, and that interview did not help him at all. We have a team now. They finished 24-25 with Staley under his tenure. We have one embarrassing loss with Staley in Jacksonville. Tom Telesco finishes 84-92. He had 3 playoff appearances, only 2 playoff wins in 11 seasons. He had 6 winning records as GM. Only 2 of them were double-digit winning seasons. So it was time to do a clean sweep. I appreciate the reset. I do. And I know a lot of people are commending Dean, and hopefully this is good news. And I said it on Twitter. I'll say it here too. Firing Staley and Telesco are great in theory. We thought it was great when they fired Lynn, though we thought it was a year too late. We thought it was great when they fired McCoy, even though we thought it was a year too late. Firing a head coach and GM only makes sense if you're willing to hire 2 guys, or if it's one person who's going to be head coach GM, that's great too. If you're hiring those guys, you're hiring them to let them make the football decisions. If you are meddling in the process, then you are not making anything different than the time before with McCoy, the time before that with Lynn, any other time before them, before even Lynn and McCoy. If John Spanos is going to have a hands-off approach and let the football guys do their job and do what they're hired to do, then we are in a full reset and we're looking for brighter times ahead. If we are doing the same thing over and over, the only reason to hire these guys are in name only and let them basically be shills and faces in that head coach and GM spots, and you're not letting them do their actual jobs. That's the point that I think we need to start to hammer home at some point, because if we're just going to have these guys hire new head coaches and GMs, even guys that we may like, if they're not going to let them make the football decisions, then we're back at square one again.
And this statement about Dean, from Dean, almost eliminates the possibility of a first-year head coach.
I
Sounds
agree.
like it. I mean, are you going to let a new guy come in? His first opportunity is to right the ship from the top down. I don't think that's a chance you're willing to take. So it really narrows the field. And then you start thinking about the names, and there aren't very many of them out there. We all have our preference. I know Bill Belichick's names comes up, but he's not necessarily my 1A or B. So I think we all stand here together with a similar mindset of who we would want to lead the team going into the future. Now it's just up to the Chargers to open their checkbooks and pay the man.
I was just going to
say the name, Craig. Who is it? Don't leave him hanging.
Jim Harbaugh. Y'all know who it is,
Yeah.
man. We've been parading it for weeks, just talking about it and passing and putting some emphasis on it. But now there's a very, very clear runway for that to happen. And we saw what's going on with him in Michigan and the talks of the new contract that's being offered up to him, contingent upon him not taking any opportunities or looking into any pro opportunities in this cycle. And he has yet to sign that deal. And I wonder why.
And Jamie, I know you're about to hop in, but just to reiterate something we had earlier on, we had it in Discord. We mentioned it on a podcast or 2 ago that now we have Schefter even confirming it. I mean, after week 2, Chargers had a conversation with John Harbaugh. Harbaugh was in the conversation. He was there. And they had kind of preliminary, feeling out temperatures in terms of whether he wanted to be with the Chargers and coach the Chargers. And then Schefter comes out today and says that they've talked about firing Staley a couple times throughout the season. So they have definitely, this move today was a move coming. And we thought it was probably last till the end of the season, let him ride out, and then they would let both Telesco and Staley go. But with the showing last night, they kind of forced their hand, and we're happy for it.
I think it's kind of like it's what we've been talking about all year, which was they would really need to see a complete collapse.
Yeah.
The team flat out quit in order to fire him during the season, because it's just not how they operate. And that's what we got. And now he's gone.
Yep.
I do think, Garrett, if you can pull up Dean's statement, I think there's some value in just reviewing that, because I think there are some Easter eggs, if you will, about how they're going to be looking at the coaching job moving forward. So most of this is just,
fluff.
Yeah. But I think if you go down to the bottom and you talk about Our fans have stood through so many ups and downs and close games. They deserve more. They've earned more. Building and maintaining a championship caliber program remains our ultimate goal. I think those words, deserve more and earn more, is pretty telling. I've never heard him speak like that about the fan base before. And I think now that you're starting to hear rumors about them being willing to cede power, being willing to bring somebody else in to make the football decisions, I think they're laying the groundwork for bringing in an experienced head coach. And they're reconsidering how they go about hiring head coaches and general managers, which to me says they're not so concerned about making sure that John Spanos is comfortable anymore. They want to win. And I think Dean gave John. I think John's been in this role since 2015. It hasn't worked the way they've been doing things, and now it's time to make a change. So hopefully, these words are meaningful, and he acts behind them. But I really do think that he's laying the groundwork for going in a different direction in terms of how they're hiring people and the decisions they're making with head coach and general manager.
2015 is when John Spanos was hired.
Yeah.
Just to give it. And I think I said John Harbaugh instead of Jim, by the way, just a little correction.
I do it every day. Don't feel bad.
I had another thought about the game last night and I forgot what it was. Oh, we're talking about them getting beat by the Raiders, who scored 3 points in their last game.
Zero.
The Raiders, 0 points in their last game. The Raiders didn't even know who they were going to start at quarterback 24 hours before the game started. Brandon Staley got outcoached by Antonio Pierce, who's been coaching for 6 games in the NFL as a head coach, an interim head coach. And the strength of that win sounds like it now might vault Antonio Pierce into consideration for being the permanent Raiders head coach moving forward.
Yeah.
So Brandon Staley taketh and he giveth away. Like he is handing that Raider job to Antonio Pierce, and thank God for that. Hopefully that works out in the Chargers' favor moving forward. And it's time. Let's go get ourselves a real head coach.
Yeah, and the Chargers were the real winners last night. They may have lost the game embarrassingly, but they gave the Raiders some little confidence that Antonio Pierce can be a head coach long-term, which I don't believe he can. The Chargers get the better draft pick. They also get rid of Staley and Telesco in one fell swoop. I mean, man, right now, looking at it today, they really came out winners. And this is Nolan put it best. Oh, whoops, not you. Nolan. Lose the battle, win the war, baby. That's what it really is about today.
I've never been more excited about embarrassment in my life. I don't think I've ever made that correlation before.
I know. Top 5, baby. Number 5 pick right now.
And you forgot the best part. Maybe the Raiders go on a winning streak to end the season. Maybe that convinces them to keep Aiden O'Connell as their long-term starting quarterback. And they fall out of that. They climb their way out of that top 10 range with the draft picks. Maybe they're in the middle of the round and they can screw up another draft pick. Chargers are just winning on all levels.
Yeah, man. This is great. Go ahead, Greg. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no. I was just saying, I did not expect everything to go down the way they did last night. I think I might have even put in the Discord, like, what if they get the crap kicked out of them by the Raiders? But then, I don't think anyone saw that I put it in there. I was just like, yeah, it probably won't happen. And then when it started to, I was like, oh, wow, did I manifest that? But anyway, it worked out. And so now we're looking at a scenario where the Chargers are in prime position to get a quality head coach and stop playing games with a top level NFL QB. Now, this is the other side of it. Can we stop the Justin Herbert slander now? Because you see what life looks like without him, and to the tune of, utter embarrassment. Chargers looked like the worst franchise in the NFL last night without 10 at the helm. And of course, Keenan Allen wasn't available, and you're missing some other guys here and there. But the team fell completely off of a cliff without 10. They had no confidence, and essentially, Brandon Staley has to pay the cost for starting the cult of put it all on Justin's shoulders and let's ride it out. Look at what it turned into. All of your confidence, everything that you associated with winning came with you putting it on the back of 10. And when he was not available to save you, you tanked it. And in a major, titanically tanked it. It was hard to watch, but the end
God.
result is we all win.
we all win in the end. Absolutely.
Actually, surprisingly,
go
it wasn't that hard to watch. I thoroughly enjoyed watching it last night because I knew what it meant moving forward. It's such a different experience going into that game, knowing that everything we need for the franchise comes out of a loss and being able to enjoy their misery and enjoy the fumbles and the blown coverages. And I mean, it's just like you're just rooting for things to go wrong. And they did. And it was kind of fun.
And and kind of a footnote here during this whole process, after Staley, Telesco get fired, Jared Cook comments on a picture, I think it was on Instagram, with the praise hands emojis after the announcement of Staley getting fired. And now we got Tyron Johnson, who we, of course, commented on, and that hopefully we can get him on the podcast. He said he's ready to go on a podcast to talk, apparently to air out some dirty laundry here, for sure. So it seems like the players coach that everybody thought Staley was, and maybe it's referring to Tom Telesco too, because they were both in the announcement, but both guys, there are some players that want to come out and say some things about these guys for sure.
Jared Cook needs to be quiet. I'm sorry. I get it, but don't wrong messenger.
Stop. Yeah.
I'm not sure how much better a messenger Tyron Johnson is, but I'm sure it'll be
And
fun.
Kyle Van Noy said something too, by the way.
Did he? What did he say?
Yeah. I'll have to look it up, but Van Noy was in there. I'll find it.
Critical of Staley?
I know I saw Van Noy say something too, because everybody was at my mentions saying we got to get Van Noy on, Jared Cook on, and Tyrod Johnson on.
I thought he was a proponent of Staley. Interesting.
So we've talked kind of around it so far, but let's just be really clear that the Chargers need to change the way they do business on the player personnel side. Hiring a powerful GM and head coach, or a head coach who comes in and handles the personnel, is great. But the biggest problem, the biggest common denominator, is John Spanos. We can't deny that anymore. He's been involved in the hires of Lynn and Staley. Wasn't necessarily involved in the hiring of Telesco, because that was before he became president of football operations, and Dean made that call. But he is the biggest common denominator in their failures, and people can call him a figurehead. They can say whatever they want. He's the president of football operations. They all answer to him. It's time to stop letting that kid cosplay NFL executive. Okay, let's just get him out of the way. Put the kid in the corner where he belongs. Let the adults talk about the football, make the football decisions. Bring in real football professionals to make real football decisions. That's how we win football games. Okay, stop screwing around with your kid. If you want to call him president of football operations, fine, but he does not need a voice in the room anymore. Get him the hell out of there. They're not going to fire him. We know they're not going to fire him. But we're also not going to lie to you. We're not going to be disingenuous and tell you that he is not part of the problem. So if fans out there have an issue with us saying that he's part of the problem, even knowing that he's not going to get fired, then that says more about you than it does about us. Because, look, we tell the truth here. We're not going to blow smoke.
I was gonna say, look, man, Dean, it's not like you have to completely kick him out of the fold, man. Just move him out of the big house and into the guest house. That's all. Just give him his own little wing. Let him hang out. Just take him away from making choices day to day with regard to the franchise, because we see where that's gotten him. We've all talked about this ad nauseum for years at this point. Now, I know some people need to turn the dial in DeLorean to 2023 and away from 2020, where they seem to be stuck, because it's all been about Tom Telesco, and that's old news. We all knew who Tom was with regard to John. John's the one who's a puppet master pulling the strings behind the scenes, and now the person that he was getting to do his bidding is gone. So I hope this means that Dean sees that his son has meddled too much and has not garnered any success from it, and now he wants to see some different results. The fans mattering to Dean says a whole lot. It also speaks to the point that I was saying before, that I knew, or I felt like I knew, that it would take like utter embarrassment for Dean to do something drastic. Now, I didn't know it was going to come to this, but thank goodness, whatever works. And at the end of the day, if he's made the moves that he's made to get rid of the head coach and the general manager, The next common denominator is his son, who, as Jamie so eloquently put it, is cosplaying as, in the position that he is. He's not a football guy, takes credit for things that he has had almost absolutely nothing really to do with. And if he wants to stand high and mighty on his hill, allow a real football guy to come in, accomplish a few things, and you can update your resume to say whatever you want. I don't care. Just stay out of the mix.
Hell, bring in Jim Harbaugh and update your resume to say I made the decision to bring in Jim Harbaugh and he got us 3 AFC championship games.
Yeah. I don't know what a degree
That can be his legacy.
I don't know what a degree in business does for football operations, but those two don't quite correlate. Now, if your last name's Spanos, that correlates. That's you get the job because of a dad. But yeah, I mean, I said it earlier. We've said it multiple times. That's definitely the case. And we don't forget the people who said that the Chargers were playoff contenders and Staley was on Coach of the Year territory here in this year, and that they're going to make a deep playoff run. Man, we're not going to do that. Not here. Not now.
Nah, we never knew what we're talking about.
I'm glad to see everybody's here with us now, though. I'm glad. But I thought a fun little exercise. Why don't we go through the Telesco drafts? You guys ready?
Oh God!
You guys ready?
I thought this was supposed to be a joyous occasion.
It is. I mean, now we know that this won't happen. Well, at least we hope this won't happen, right? Isn't that the point of this?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we can grade it. Let's grade it. All right. 2013. It went DJ Fluker, traded up from Manti Te'o, Keenan Allen, Steve Williams, Torek Williams, then Brad Sorensen in 2013. Keenan
is the only one who is still in the league,
but might be future Hall of Famer. Keenan Allen. So that's going to bring the grade up for sure. But
even think about that, though. We've discussed this also as well multiple times in the past. Keenan Allen falling to the third round was not something that was supposed to happen. He trained on an injured knee, ran like a 4.7 and fell. So, yeah, I guess you could say he took a shot at Keenan in the third round, but that was a first round prospect that no one wanted to take a swing on. And I mean, if you want to give him credit for that, then sure. But that draft could have been much worse had Keenan not fallen.
Oh my God. Yeah, man. All right. So then we move on. I zoomed in too much. 2014, Jason Verrett, Jeremiah Tauchu, Chris Watt, Ryan Carruthers, Marion Grice, Tevin Reese. Man, what could have been with Jason Verrett, but boy.
But it wasn't.
It wasn't.
They made us really cheer for Tevin Reese, man. I thought that kid was going to be something. The 7th round speedster. That's how long we've been asking for fast guys on this team, by the way.
Yeah. Date back to at least 2014 for sure.
They went and got a fast guy. He just couldn't play football.
Yeah. Pre-podcast. BTLR before. 2015, Melvin Gordon, Denzel Perryman, Craig Mager, Kyle Emanuel, Darius Philon.
So this was our first draft doing the podcast. Do you remember sitting in a bar watching this with people?
It was the bullpen and Kearney Mesa. I do remember that. Yep.
And freaking out because they drafted Melvin Gordon after we'd gone on a tirade about how much we hated him.
And they traded up for him.
They traded up for him.
I remember. Oh, do I remember?
Because
I remember the bar. Yeah, like 2 people.
Yeah, I was going to say 6, but
okay, 6. I the numbers. It's our first podcast. But I do remember in that bar, it was like everybody was watching for the Chargers pick because it was in San Diego then, and there's people clapping and excited, and I just remember looking over at our group and just be like, "Oh no."
Wasn't Mager one of those guys that wasn't expecting to get drafted where he did? So he was out doing something else. Like, the Chargers love that.
Somebody was in the shower. Somebody was bowling. Somebody didn't have their phone on them. There was a lot of stories here about that. And my boy, Craig Mager. Thank you, chat. 2016, Joey Bosa, Hunter Henry, Max Turk, Joshua Perry, Jatavius Brown, Drew Kaiser, Derek Watt, Donovan Clark. I mean, Joey Bosa's still there. Hunter Henry's still in the league. Everybody else is out of the league. Right? Jatavius Brown isn't still in the league, is he?
I'm pretty sure he's retired.
No.
Yeah.
Recently, I think in the last few years. But this draft, I was actually somewhat excited about. I felt like some of those mid-round picks, even Jatavis, like just the athleticism at the second level, I felt like it could translate. Man, just some of those names got me all like hot and bothered for the next season because I was just certain that it looked like they were finally building based on talent and then actually evaluating guys in that level of production. It just seemed like it meshed, and some of those names falling where they did just worked out. And I mean, long term, not so much. In the short term, a few of those guys balled pretty hard for a while. Even Jatavis in that one really, really good year, I believe he had. But other than that, a lot of those names also gone.
Yeah, Hunter. So, yeah, this was blow it up for Bosa days. This was a good year for us.
That was a really good year for us. I remember celebrating that Bosa pick like no other.
And man, did we catch shit. Ooh, man, we took some heat.
So wait, was that the same? Wait, wasn't that the same year? So it was Bosa or who's the lineman for the Ravens?
Not DeForest.
No. I thought it was offensive lineman or no.
No, it's
the
Jalen
Bosa
Ramsey.
year, it was Jalen Ramsey, DeForest Buckner, and Bosa.
Joey Bosa.
And
there was also
another
that
lineman,
Kemdichi
from Florida. Wasn't there a kid from Florida?
No, it was Robert Kemdichi from.
No. Are you thinking of Ronnie Stanley?
Was it Stanley that same year?
So, because I think that was the year that Matt Miller said that they were drafting.
It was.
I remember whoever it was on the opposite side of the ball, so I'm pretty sure it was Stanley.
Yeah,
it was Stanley was from Notre Dame, but that was Matt Miller said that he had heard rumors that they were going to take Stanley with the third pick.
That was
like an hour before the draft.
So we stay on an island with Joey Bosa. Then he holds out, and everybody attacks him, his mom, us.
Yep.
We get roped into that, and then boy, it all ends up working out. 2017, Mike Williams, Forrest Lamp, Dan Feeney, Rashawn Jenkins, Desmond King, Sam Tevy, Isaac Rochelle.
This actually wasn't a terrible draft. I mean, Lamp and Feeney didn't work out, but Williams wound up being somewhat productive. Jenkins is still in the league and playing pretty well. King had some really good years with the Chargers, and I think is still a starting slot for Texas, the Texans, if I'm not mistaken.
I think they cut him and then they picked him back.
Yeah. Yep.
Tevy started for a while as a left tackle. Rochelle had some production for the Chargers for a little while, so that was actually one of his deeper and better drafts, I think.
Yeah, initially I hated that Mike pick. Like the night it happened.
I didn't
literally. I had just moved to Texas. I want to say the week prior or 2 weeks prior to that. So I was watching it and just remembered sinking in my chair because that was the draft that filled through the fit about them potentially picking a quarterback. And that's how we ended up with Mike. So yeah, Mike's made some big plays throughout the year. Unfortunately, the injuries and everything have taken their toll. But yeah, I just remember feeling like crap and trying to explain to myself why the pick made sense, and it took me about a week to even get on board with it.
That was when they were going to draft Deshaun Watson. Remember that?
Yeah.
Saved us. At first, we're like, come on, we could have had Deshaun Watson, but now, boy, are we glad we didn't get Deshaun Watson.
I think Lynn actually wanted Mahomes in that draft. I think Telesco wanted Watson, Lynn wanted Mahomes, and they went with Mike.
I know the Saints wanted Mahomes badly too that year.
Yeah. Whew. All right. Moving on to 2018. Derwin James, Uchenna Nwosu, Justin Jones, Kaiser White, Scott Quessenberry, Dylan Cantrell. Derwin obviously being the good one. Uchenna had some productive years, doing pretty good with the Seahawks. Justin Jones was not good. Kaiser White was a fun one for a little bit. Quessenberry
for 1 year.
Yeah.
At the end.
Quessenberry never got a shot. Ever.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with him. He got one small cup of coffee, what was it, 2019, 2020, and played really well, and then they refused to put him back on the field.
Yep. Which makes you wonder again. I mean, how much does on-field performance actually matter? If you got a coaching staff that's overlooking that, does it sound like somebody might have been getting in the way? Just asking.
Then this next year, boy, Jerry Tillery, Nasir Adderley, Trey Pipkins, Drew Tranquil, Easton Stick, the starter last night, Emeka Egbule, and then Cortez Broughton. Tillery was always a bad pick.
One of his worst drafts, maybe his worst draft.
Oh,
That's pretty bad.
Hold on. Hold on. Hold on.
But wait,
But
there's
wait,
more.
there's more because I couldn't fit this current draft class on the on this list. Then Justin Herbert, he got him in 2020. Kenneth Murray, Joshua Kelly, Joe Reed, Alohi Gilman, KJ Hill.
That was
Outside
a
of
pretty
Herbert,
bad draft. Outside of
Yeah.
Herbert, that was pretty bad.
yeah, it's just like the Keenan draft. Like Herbert's going to drag your grade up, but man,
My boy Joe. My
big
boy
swings and
Tariq.
misses. Yep, your boy Joe, rest in peace in the 5th round. Then 2021, Rashawn Slater fell to him. Santi Samuel Jr., Joshua Palmer, Trey McKitty, Chris Rumpf, Brendan Hymus, Nick Neiman, Larry Roundtree, Mark Webb. There's Rashawn, a good one. Asante Samuel Jr. still producing. Joshua Palmer. Trey McKitty was awful then and now. And then everybody else after that. I mean, Nick Neiman, a special teamer. Chris Rumpf. I don't know what to do with him anymore, but
Neiman's been pretty valuable as a special teamer.
Sure. Yeah. 2022, Zion Johnson, JT Woods, Isaiah Spiller, Atito Abonia, Jamari Salyer, Jasir Taylor, Dean Leonard, Xander Horvath.
It's looking like a pretty bad draft right there.
It is. Zion struggling.
Zion struggling. I mean, I don't even see a path to Woods making the roster next year with a new GM and a new head coach.
Yeah.
Who knows what to make of Spiller at this point? Tito's been fine. Salyer, fine. Jasir is terrible. Leonard is whatever. Horvath, is he even still in the league anymore?
Yeah, remember he came over to the practice squad. Yeah. They brought him back. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
Yeah, this JT Woods is going to be a mess.
And this is where you're going to see the most turnover. When you see these like mid-round or earlier round projects that haven't panned out, whoever comes in may not be willing to take the time out to attempt to develop a guy who they probably don't see very much in. That was a Staley project, and we know how we feel about those. Those guys have a tendency to just kind of come and go, and no one ever notices.
Yeah, there's going to be no tie to any of these guys, these projects that TT brought in and Staley wanted.
So how do you evaluate these classes? I mean,
hold on. 2023. There's one more. Quentin Johnston, Thule, Dion Henley, Darius Davis, Jordan McFadden, Scott Matlock, Max Duggan. Thule's been impressive. QJ, I mean, they got to draft another wide receiver with as bad as that's been. Darius had a bad night last night, but he's been a really good returner. Henley can't get on the field.
But this is one of those TBDs for real, though. Not just saying it because we're in this year. Some of these guys haven't even gotten a shot yet.
Yeah.
So, or any real playing time to speak of. Now, I mean, I'm still happy about the Darius Davis pick based on like they picked him for a reason, and he's the best in the league this year at that.
Mm-hmm.
We expected more of him offensively because of the way they used him earlier, and that hasn't quite materialized because for some reason they are like refusing to target him down the field. So yeah, this draft class and up in the air, the whole QJ thing, we know we didn't love that. So we'll see where it goes. But where it falls right now, I'm not going to say it's one of the worst yet. I think it'll end up being somewhere in the middle when all is said and done.
Yeah, it's too early to kill this year's draft class.
Oh no, I'm not doing that. We just I'm just going through all of them. So you're gonna say, Jamie?
I was just saying, like, how do you evaluate some of these classes? Like, are you evaluating them based on how many of the guys got a second contract? Are you evaluating them based on production relative to draft slot? Because, like, for example, what was that? The draft class that Asante was in, Slater, Asante, and Palmer, you're getting 3 guys that are probably going to get second contracts out of that.
That's 21.
Even as bad as the rest of that draft class was, if you make 7 picks and 3 of those guys get second contracts, was it that bad of a draft class? I don't know.
So here's where I think we GMs really make their money, and Telesco never did. Now I get he hit on some guys, but a lot of them, quite honestly, kind of fell into their lap. Keenan Allen fall into the 3rd round. Derwin James falling to him, Rashawn Slater falling to him. What I think really, really plagued Tom Telesco, this team, and how we saw it last night is he could never get solid depth guys. He was not a good guy in the middle rounds to late rounds and building out depth in this roster to make it a strong roster. Yes, you got some guys at the top, like even Joey Bosa and Justin Herbert and Derwin James and Slater, and then having Keenan Allen fall to you. But in those middle rounds, he could not get any depth. The guys that he drafted in day 2 and day 3 rarely got a second contract, and quite honestly, didn't see the field for another team at all. And there's a lot of turnover in the NFL, and the average, I think, contract for an NFL player is 3 years. So
the average lifespan,
career, career is 3 years. Now, that's going to happen. There's going to be turnover. You're not going to hit on, especially these guys in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. But in those middle rounds, the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, he got no depth at all throughout those 11 years as a GM. And I think that's what made him a terrible GM, because everybody's going to cherry pick the Keenan Allen, the Herberts, the Derwins, the Slaters. But when you really, really start to break down a roster, a good GM is going to build out in the middle and build up out your depth when those guys that get drafted high get hurt, like Keenan Allen. And they don't have that. And they really never did during his tenure.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Oh, go ahead, Craig.
I was going to say, for me, it's all about rounds 3 through 5. How many of those guys can you get to second contracts? Because it shows your level of development. You can have the eye for the talent, but then you also have to be able to pick the coaching staff who can grow them. And so he, pissed down his leg on multiple fronts. Unfortunately, the Chargers ended up, at the point they're at now and screwing the pooch on this season and years past, because they've not had that type of depth to lean on when those top level guys go down. And that's the problem with the Chargers and Tom Telesco. Very top heavy. You've got the big names. They lean on them to succeed. When those guys falter for some reason or another, because at least 2 to 3 of them are going to go down due to injury, it's just the Charger way. Apparently, you've got nothing to fall back on. And that is probably what, when you look at Tom Telesco's tenure, is going to be his undoing. He didn't have guys to step up, and that whole next man mentality thing sounds great. But when you've got dudes behind the starters who can't play a lick of ball whatsoever, then that's just all coach speak. So for me, it's the mid round that does it. 3 through 5. You can't expect all of those guys to pan out, but you have to at least, your hit rate has to be a lot higher than Telesco's was.
I think that's a fair point. And I think also, in addition to the depth, I think, where's the leadership on the field? Something that stood out to me was, I had a prior obligation during the game, so I'm driving out to that obligation at halftime, and they had the sideline reporter, I forget what her name is, Shannon, I think, or whatever her name is. She came on, and they were asking her, what's the mood like? Money and JD or DJ, what's the mood like on the field? Are they pissed? Have they quit? Are they upset? What's going on? And she was like, well, the sideline is kind of split right now. It's split between guys who have resigned what this game is and what the season is, and guys who are frankly pissed about what they're seeing on the field and are trying to drag people out of it. And they were like, okay, well, what's the split? Who's pissed? Who's resigned? She could come up with 4 names of guys who were pissed on the sideline. She said Easton Stick, who was it?
Rashawn Slater.
Easton Stick, Rashawn Slater, Khalil Mack, and
I saw 3, so maybe are we missing
I
someone?
think there was a 4th that I had forgotten about.
Derwin?
No, Derwin wasn't on that list.
Oh,
it was Gerald Everett. Those were the 4 she could come up with who were pissed. And that's it. And I think that kind of speaks to the lack of leadership on the field. People like to criticize Justin Herbert. Is he enough of a vocal leader? Is he, animated enough? Is he passionate enough on the field? I think we've started to see some of that coming around with him. But when he's not on the field, who are the guys that are pulling guys out of that, defeated mindset? And I don't think anybody was doing that last night. And I think that kind of speaks to the character of the football team, and that is as much of a knock on Telesco as it is on Staley. When your guys are, like I said, quitting in real time on national television, that tells you all you need to know about what that locker room is like, and what the leadership is like, both on the field and in the front office. Nobody's buying in. and they need to find some leaders on that because they can't have that. They just can't have guys quitting like that.
No, and through the years with Telesco, it was always nobody with character concerns, all these, high character guys. And then now when the going gets tough, everybody shrinks, and you saw it on the field. They absolutely quit, and there's not enough guys on the field or on this roster that's going to pick any of these guys up. So obviously a big part of that too.
I mean, I've seen better body language on my kids' softball teams than I saw on the field last night. I mean, those were professional athletes, guys getting paid anywhere from hundreds of thousands to tens of millions of dollars to play that game. And they all had the worst body language, heads down, shoulders down. The announcers, the DJ and Money, used the word mope multiple times on the
They were
radio
despondent.
They were moping on the field. These are grown men who get paid to play a game, and they're moping on the field. And that just speaks to a complete void of leadership on the field.
This whole thing about having a team of good guys is really ridiculous. It's about balance. You're going to need some guys that are maybe a little rough around the edges on your squad, but then the flip side to that is having leadership to help bring them along and provide guidance and keep them in line. I think all of the good teams really have a few of those dudes, but then you have those standout leaders who those guys follow, and they won't do anything to disrupt the actual, what's going on within the team throughout the season as far as the direction they're going in. They will stay in line behind those leaders, and the Chargers lack that. I mean, right now you've got Khalil Mack, and Khalil isn't necessarily a vocal guy per se. He just goes out on the field and does it. And when you talk to him, you can see that he's serious. He's got a dog mentality to him. But the Chargers lack those type of players that are more vocal. And the whole thing about Justin Herbert, if you want to, Ryan Fitzpatrick got on in the post show and started rattling on about Justin needing to be more vocal. And even in that dismantling that Herbert had absolutely nothing to do with, they found a reason to blame something on him somehow. Yeah. At the end of the day, the whole Boy Scout thing sounds great, but really and truly, you're playing a gladiator, quote unquote, sport, and you're going to need some, some rough and tumble dudes.
Some gladiators.
There you go.
I wanted to bring a comment on because I kind of take issue with it. So hang on one second.
Oh,
did it come up?
Yeah, it's there.
Okay, so +1 says there's a ton of bad luck for TT, to be fair. From the beginning, Derek Cox, Orlando Franklin, Jared Gaither, Brandon Flowers, Dwight Freeney, he had to fill slots, and those guys maybe produced 1 year. So I take issue with this for a couple of reasons. One,
we're giving excuses to Telesco.
Yeah, this is his job, is to evaluate these guys and bring them in to fill holes. Derek Cox was somebody who, when he got signed for the money they signed him for, the whole league looked at it and was like, what the fuck is that? So it's not really a surprise he didn't work out. I think the one that surprised me was Orlando Franklin, because Garrett and I, and in all candor, we wanted them to sign him. He was a guy who was considered a top 10 free agent, maybe even top 5 free agent at guard and tackle. It just seemed like you could slide him wherever you wanted, and he was going to fit. He did not work out. It seemed like he got paid and he just lost interest in playing. Gaither's another one, got paid, got fat, lost interest in playing. They didn't evaluate the character properly. Flowers worked out pretty well for them before they gave him the second big deal. Then he fell on his face, and Freeney was done when they signed him. I mean, he was cut by Indianapolis, and he was cooked.
This is Eric Kendricks before Eric Kendricks.
Yep. Or Thomas Davis, or any name you want to mention of these aging veterans that he brings in who don't work out. This is not bad luck. Orlando Franklin, okay, I can go with that. That was bad luck. Who could have foreseen that happening based on the way he played in Denver?
What about JC Jackson? Would you put him in that category? I would.
Bad luck?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, they seemed to mishandle him, and it seemed like they didn't really understand who he was as a person. So I'm not sure that's bad luck. I just think that's.
But the play has gone in the toilet.
The play has gone in the toilet, but his issues were equal parts bad play and bad attitude.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And pointing fingers. And that's a character thing, and that's just not doing your homework. So I don't know. A lot of these guys were just bad signings from the beginning out of desperation.
Bob Sanders.
Bob Sanders is another one.
Jacoby
Franklin's
Jones, Travis
Lots of cool guys.
Benjamin,
You see the connections there from
Kyle
Yeah.
Van Noy,
yeah.
King
I mean,
Dunlap.
yeah. I mean, some of these signings worked. There were a lot of them that did work. Franklin's the one that I think was bad luck because you couldn't have seen that happening. But otherwise, like I don't agree with that it was bad luck. He just had some bad signings.
Takeo Spikes.
Takeo Spikes,
bringing up a bunch of names.
and just didn't do his homework.
Yep. Well, I think we're about to get out of here. So Todd, Terrorist Tom is gone. Never thought I'd see the day. Cheers, fellas. Cheers to everybody joining us. Appreciate you guys coming on a middle of a Friday afternoon, but a good day, hopefully, for the Chargers. But before we get out of here, we want to reiterate, Craig said it, I've said it, Jamie said it. This is a great day. Getting rid of Tom Telesco as GM and his process in signing free agents in the draft, which we always had issues with, and we think they've kept him for 2 or 3 years too long. He's gone. Brandon Staley, he should have. He should not have hired a third head coach. Brandon Staley, definitely not head coach material. He's gone. That's all good. The notes about that the fans deserve better and that they're looking to kind of go a hands-off approach, all great. Love all that. It only matters unless they do it. As long as they can put up and shut up and hire a experienced head coach and general manager and stop the meddling in the football operations part, that's all the only way this team can be any good. If they're going to keep doing the process in which they've been doing for years and since 2015, at least when John got this job, John Spanos, then we're going to see the same result again, whether they hire, Ben Johnson or Harbaugh. If they're meddling in it, I think Harbaugh is going to overtake that. But regardless, no matter who they hire, they have to stay out of the process. And I think that's the point. Great day. We're all celebrating the way they've taken out of all this mess that they've had. As I mentioned earlier, the way Telesco has had a chokehold on this organization for 11 years. They're out of it now. But please, for the love of God, Spanos family, we know you're watching because we got a lot of people watching right now. Let John be in name only, hire Harbaugh, put it on his resume for whatever he wants to do after hopefully you sell the team. Then we'll have everything kosher, and I think we'll be good to go from there. Any last words before we get out of here, guys?
Just say no to Bill Belichick. Just say yes to Jim Harbaugh.
Okay.
Get us Harbaugh, make it happen. Enjoy the next 5 or 6 years before he flames out and needs to leave. But let's enjoy it while we can. And also, like I said earlier, and I said it on Twitter, we're celebrating what this means for the team. Staley and Telesco, by all accounts, are good human beings, good men.
Yes.
We don't need to cheer them getting fired. We don't need to cheer what this does to their families and uproots their families. Let's not make this personal. Let's separate the football from the personal.
Yep.
And be glad they're gone, but we don't need to necessarily celebrate that they lost their jobs and what this is doing to their families and make this personal.
Yes.
Everyone knows that I keep the files. Dean, that statement you put out, I am screenshotting that bad boy and plastering it on my computer. It might be my screensaver because I'm going to hold you to every word in there. And hopefully you back up what you said because all Charger fans are watching. You're in LA now. Time to step it up.
Yep. We've got it. We got it here. The fans deserve better. They deserve more. Frankly, they've earned more. And that is the absolute truth. And thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Salute.